Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this webinar. This is Sarah Diaz from the California WIC Association. I'm going to be facilitating today and just handling sort of some housekeeping stuff. So right now you should all be in mute mode, and I'd ask you to keep yourselves in mute mode to reduce the chance of some background noise while we're on the webinar. Also, if you have questions as we go along, you can either use the little hand icon to raise your hand or type them into the question box so that we can get to them as we're going along or get to them at the end. And these webinars tend to run a little long with questions, so if you have a chance to stay on, that's great. But if not, we will be recording the webinar, and you will get a link to the recording in your email tomorrow, along with an evaluation that we would ask you to please complete. So if you miss a little bit of it, never fear, you will have access to the recording. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Robbie Gonzalez-Dow of the California Breastfeeding Coalition to do introductions.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar on California's 2018 World Breastfeeding Week Lactation Accommodation Campaign, Social Media Skill Building Workshop. It is the second webinar in a series to focus on lactation accommodation. As Sarah said, I'm Robbie with the California Breastfeeding Coalition, and our vision is that there are no barriers to breastfeeding in California. And our mission is to improve the health and well-being of Californians by working collaboratively to promote, protect, and support breastfeeding. And we do stand behind that. This webinar series is being supported by a current collaboration between the California WIC Association, California Department of Public Health, and the California Breastfeeding Coalition. We are part of a CDC-funded Children's Healthy Weight Coin on breastfeeding. The term COIN is an acronym for Collaborative Improvement and Innovation Network. The purpose is to build the capacity of individuals and organizations working directly with communities with low breastfeeding duration to be able to support workplace and school lactation and reduce related infant feeding disparities. We want all California parents who return to work or school after giving birth and choose to breastfeed and provide human milk to equally and adequately be accommodated. The first webinar we held in April, titled Lactating Employees Workplace Rights in California, was recorded and is available for you to view if you missed it. So far, we've had 116 views, and on that day, we had well over 100 people attend the webinar. We will once again send the recording of the link to you and posted in the post-webinar email, and we can also send this image to you that you can share with your colleagues. We highly recommend that you share the webinar link with your colleagues and coworkers. And there are other ways you can use this webinar recording, such as your local breastfeeding coalition or at a staff meeting. We are recording the webinar today, as Sarah mentioned, and the recording will be emailed to you after the webinar, most likely tomorrow. So please, again, we ask that you share the link to today's webinar. And we also have some other opportunities for training. We're going to have another webinar in the fall, and we will have in-person training at the California Breastfeeding Summit in January, the 29th to the 31st. And so one of those days, we're going to have an intensive all-day training on how to reach employers, and at the California WIC Association Conference, also next year in April, and it's April 28th through May 1st. One other item, couple other items before our presenters speak. We are preparing for World Breastfeeding Week. That's the purpose of part of today. This webinar is to prepare you for that week, but also month in California. So the theme is lactation accommodation, and part of this COIN, the webinars are focusing on lactation accommodation. And right now there's a State Assembly Concurrent Resolution 234. And it was introduced by Assembly Member Rubio at the request of the California California WIC Association. ACR 234 proclaims August 2018 as Breastfeeding Awareness Month in California. So right now it's in Assembly Appropriations, and you can use the language. You can look it up. If you just Googled info California, there will be a link that comes up. It's also on the California Breastfeeding Coalition website under current legislation. You can see the text, and really we are celebrating breastfeeding awareness in California for the whole month. We also want to remind you about Black Breastfeeding Week. It's August 25th through the 31st, and the theme is Love on top of joy, grief, everything. You can check for the updates at the website blackbreastfeedingweek.org or on their Facebook page, Black Breastfeeding Week. So today we have two speakers, Lynette Enigbo. She's with the Development and Evaluation Coordinator at the United States Breastfeeding Committee, and Erica Root. She's the Communication Specialist with Maternal, Child, and Adolescent Health Division with the California Department of Public Health. So we welcome them both here today. We're going to learn a lot, and I am now going to pass on the screen to Erica.
Hi, thanks so much, Robbie. Thank you all for being here today. As Robbie announced, I'm Erica Root with the California Department of Public Health's Maternal, Child, and Adolescent Health Division. And I think I am going to be taking over the screen. I think it needs to be sent over to me. Let me show my screen. Excellent. Maybe we can see some things happening here. So today, the bulk of the presentation is going to be led by Lynette, but I want to start and end the presentation by pointing you to this web page. I hope everybody can see it on their screens. This is our special California Celebrates 2018 World Breastfeeding Week page, and it hosts an array of different resources that we want to make available to everybody so that we're all speaking with a common voice this coming August, and we can all feel engaged on social media because we know it can be overwhelming at times, and so we want to make it as easy as possible to share resources and raise awareness this August. So I just want to point you to this. We are sharing the link also in the chat box so that you can have access to it, but we have sample social media posts which can also be found below. And I'm going to walk you through some of these resources towards the end of the presentation, but we just want to make sure you're aware of them because we want to come back full circle. So once you feel prepared to engage on Twitter and social media, we can, go a little bit more in depth about what we have available so that you can kind of launch from here in preparation for August. So I'll turn it over to Lynette. Sarah, can you help me transfer over to Lynette?
Yep, I went ahead and sent it to her.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Lynette Enigbo. Thank you for that introduction. I am currently the Development and Evaluation Coordinator at USBC, formerly the PR and Communications Coordinator. So there at least was a tie at one point that for why I do social media in terms of title, but I'm still the person that runs the social media. I'm coming from Indiana University, where I studied public health and worked with the Office for Women's Affairs to do a lot of advocacy around maternal and child health after I had my son, who's pictured here. So I want to jump into the presentation today because we're going to cover a wide range of things. Oh, I'm not in presenter mode. Let me get in presenter mode so you guys can see my presentation more clearly. Uh-oh. Okay, there you go. Okay, so first I want to start by just going through a few of the results. Thank you for everyone that took the poll that went out before this presentation. So some of the things that jumped out for me from that poll were almost 75% of responders don't have a personal Twitter account. 37% report that the organization, only 37% had organizations with a Twitter account. 18% had over 200 followers. And then only 12% that felt that Twitter actually provided any benefit to their organization, which is really, that's a pretty low number, 12%. So I want to, I structured my presentation so that hopefully we get at some of these statistics and begin to increase them, especially this 12% in terms of organizational benefit. So we do have another poll we're going to pull up, because I was wondering in terms of how, I wanted to know how many people are here thinking about managing their own personal accounts versus their organizational account. So if we can get that poll up.
So I think we'll take a few seconds to complete it.
All right, so we're about how many people have voted? About 69, 70% of attendees have voted. I'm going to give it a few more seconds.
Okay.
Annette, while we're waiting for the responses, is there an app similar to the Facebook Manager where you can manage both your personal and your organizational, or do you have to have the app on there more than once?
Oh, yes. No, Twitter does allow you to, just the basic Twitter app actually allows you to sign into multiple names at one time.
Okay,
so that's completely possible. Okay, so yeah, so the vast majority are definitely more here thinking about their organization versus their personal needs. And I want to say that it's not drastically different in terms of using, as a professional anyway, managing Twitter as a professional versus as an organization is not drastically different. So even if you're here for your personally, I think you should still be able to get a lot out of this presentation. So we are going to cover fear of tweeting. We're going to explore your Twitter voice, explore the basics of Twitter, and then talk about why you need context and not just content. So a lot. But so I want to start off by talking about the fear of tweeting. And I pulled up this really amazing article from The Atlantic. And it talks about what exactly makes Twitter specifically stressful. And I think it's really important to understand exactly that feeling that a lot of us have when we begin to use social media, so that we can be clear and just say, okay, this is what that is, and move on from it. And it's that there's constantly new information happening, and people tend to follow people who are more accomplished or successful. And I say that with air quotes to myself, in terms of that normally just means people who have set up their Twitter accounts really well and have a lot of followers, which how that translates to success is really up to the individual. But it's the comparison that makes us anxious, right? And the idea that we're constantly being bombarded with information as we're trying to process the information in the space we're actually in. And so once you know that, then you can say, okay, I need to be in a quiet space to use Twitter, or I need to keep my perspective about what success means as I'm using this platform. And so, if Twitter is stressful, why use it? And if 12% of organizations feel like it's beneficial, why are we having this webinar? And I think that, so we want to talk about, why is Twitter important? Twitter is a really effective tool for building and engaging and informing your community, right? Twitter allows you to communicate directly with stakeholders, supporters, and politicians, increasingly, as we are increasingly in the need to do more advocacy work. Twitter is a public conversation with your state, local, or your national representatives. So on every single level, you are able to reach out to people who we normally do not have access to. So it's really shifting the paradigm of how advocacy happens in the United States, globally as well too. It's also a great tool for fundraising, and it is a great source of information. So a lot of us know that, I mean, if you're a journalist, you have to be on Twitter. News breaks on Twitter first. So if you want to be up to date on the latest news and trends, you really got to be on Twitter. So part of reducing the anxiety of using Twitter is really honing and understanding what your Twitter voice is going to be. And your Twitter voice is really your brand. It's how you engage with your followers, and it's how you grow your following. Because Twitter is a conversation, your voice is the most compelling thing. So that your voice includes what do you say and how do you say it. And so that's why being really clear about what your purpose is on Twitter is really helpful, because then you can say, okay, my voice is child and maternal health, and that's it. That's what I'm talking about. Like, though, that is my passion, and that's what I do. And you don't have to wonder, should I tweet about my lunch today? No, you don't, because you know exactly why you're there, and you don't. And staying in that lane allows you to keep your perspective and keep moving forward. And then people know to come to you for specific things. So we have an example. This is the USBC statement that we posted about the separation of migrant children from their parents. And so it was a pinned tweet, and I put it up as an example of your Twitter voice, because Twitter, and there'll be some slides on this, but there are certain types of posts that work really well on Twitter. And one of those is just strong position statements. Like, this is where we stand on this issue. And for it to be clear and direct, and because it's Twitter, it has to be concise. Although they are, this line, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but this red line denotes that it's a comment, and you can see the top of the next tweet is actually ours. So we have done what I call a chain. So when you want to do a longer post, you can add them together, and we'll talk about that later. But just the ability to say, this is a strong, direct statement. And as you see, people can retweet and like it because they can affirm that. And that is part of USBC's voice that we are working really hard to cultivate on social media. So I wanted to give that example. So your voice is not, and if you're thinking to yourself, my organization really isn't at the point of making our own statements. And as USBC, it's really, we have to craft statements. So that statement needed to be crafted, and a lot of people needed to look at it before I was even able to put it on social media. So this still applies, because the things that you retweet, so before we pin that tweet to the top, we retweeted a lot of organizations expressing outrage about the separation. We tweeted about why it's important for breastfeeding children to stay with their migrant parents. We began to develop that voice just by choosing certain things to share, right? By saying, okay, we are going to share about the current status of migrant separation, because this is an issue that we have decided is important, because we are for all the children, right? Not just American citizen babies, And so that was a really important part of us building our voice, and it's something that's built over time. And I wanted to head over to the Twitter for the California breastfeeding, so that I could show you guys.
And we are really learning this skill along with all of you.
but it is those are humble words. I think that it's a beautiful Twitter account, and I wanted to show it to you because, I think the perception is, we constantly live in a space where it seems like people become famous overnight. Like, things go viral and they have 100,000 followers, but that's really not the reality. That's really tantamount to somebody making it to the NBA. There are a lot of boys playing basketball that aren't going to make it to the NBA, but like, it is more about that slow and steady persistence that you can really build a strong, dedicated following. And so I just want to take a look and show you how their Twitter really reflects their values, right? And it stays consistently on message and on brand, right? So you can see very clearly as you scroll down that this is a source for national news, but it is also a source for specific things that are very specific to the state of California, right? Which is not something that USBC necessarily does. So you can see the ways in which their Twitter crafts a niche for themselves in the space of breastfeeding, right? And so you can scroll through. If you're on a page, I highly encourage that you go visit their page, follow their page. Some really big examples of how Twitter can be used to create a voice for yourself just by retweeting, because a lot is retweets, and they also share from Facebook. So I wanted to make sure to go over there. I'd really encourage you guys to take a look at that. And we'll be going back there actually later. But just because you're only retweeting doesn't mean you're not cultivating a voice. Retweets are important because, and when we looked at the screen, you can see that it comes up when a USBC post comes up, it comes up the exact same way as one of their original posts. It's basically repeating something somebody else said. It's a quote. And so it's coming out of your own mouth. So it's part of your public voice. So one of the things that I think it's important in terms of Twitter, in terms of overcoming your fear of Twitter, is I think a lot of us are scared to say the wrong thing, right? And I think the big thing for me as someone who manages social media for an organization is being very clear about what you're saying and being prepared to clarify and defend any tweet that you put out there, right? So personally, if I am not sure that I can defend a tweet, I will not tweet it, right? So this is something that everyone in the organization understands, and it has happened where I'm like, I do not think that there is a good argument for why we might say something like this. And I really love and respect the organization that I work for, because that's honored in the rare instance that it's happened. It's really something that's important, especially because you are constantly bombarded with information, and you are on the front lines. If people get upset about something, you are on the front lines of that. So it's really important to be clear when you put something out there. What are the counter arguments, and how are you going to defend the thing that you just put out there, right? And I think once you are clear about that, then it reduces the anxiety of tweeting significantly. Because you have been intentional and mindful from the beginning about what you're tweeting. And so that is my biggest, don't be worried about tweeting the wrong thing. Just be clear about what you're saying and why you're saying it. And, what you're going to say if somebody asks why you did it. So I think I'm going to say, and I say this a lot, which is remember the purpose. Remember why you got on social media in the first place. It can be a very distracting place, and the more grounded you are in why you're there and what you're doing, the fewer mistakes you'll make.
Lynette, we have a few questions. Would you like me to talk about them now, or do you want to wait till the end?
Well, I can answer them.
Okay, so can you please explain the difference between liking and retweeting?
Oh, okay. That's going to be covered.
Okay, and the next one is a little more complicated. In light of the latest news about breastfeeding UN resolution, how would you respond?
Well, that's a great question. So I think that that's what happens when you manage the social media for an organization, right? Because I am not the sole decision maker, and I am accountable to individuals. So what I had to do was first I had to wait, right, and wait for our staff meeting this morning to figure out. We're also not we are an organization of organizations, and we take that really, really seriously. So the staff at USBC doesn't just say, this is what we're doing. We have to consult the board. We have to consult, if there's a constellation, we have to go to the people in that constellation. It can be a complicated process. And I think you'll find that even within your organizations, even if you exercise more autonomy, it can still be a complicated process. And as the person on social media, watching that rapid change of information, everything feels slow. And you have to kind of say, okay, we are not slow. We are thoughtful. We are mindful and intentional. And I can't let the pace of social media cause me to rush. But this is also the point at which once your organization has established, of course, like this is not okay, and we are definitely going to come out with an official statement, then I can say, well, I may not have a statement, but I have a retweet. I have a like, and I'm going to deploy that retweet and that like to start building a voice about this is what we think about this, so that when the statement comes out, it's coming out on top of us echoing some of the things that our partners are saying and lending audience and support to their voice, right? So sort of becoming part of the choir through retweets. So that's how I, as the manager of the social media, that's how I am currently in real time handling that situation. And it's a really good question because it happens in our field.
Thank you for saying that, Lynette, because I often feel that way, that pressure. And thank you for that comment.
Great. Okay. Awesome. I'm glad that's helpful. Tweeting for growth. I just have a few tips of the trade, which is posting frequently and consistently. And so I use a third-party tool called Hootsuite. We actually use one called Sprout Social. But Hootsuite's a really great platform to start with, and you can do one account for free. And so I highly recommend starting there. And we'll talk about that towards the end and how you can get more resources about that. I also highly recommend that you engage in conversations that are already happening using hashtags like World Breastfeeding Week 2018 or WBW 2018 and NBM 18. And that's really important because, it basically puts you into a group, right? So it also helps people identify that, oh, this is an issue that's important to them. And then you are part of a conversation rather than just tweeting by yourself out there and trying to start conversation, then you joining somebody else's conversation. It's kind of like going to a networking event for Twitter is the equivalent of using a hashtag. And so I highly recommend doing that, especially with both of these events coming up. And as a social media manager, I'll tell you that we peak. Our peak engagement is in August. So if you are going to start in August. Tweeting in August is going to be, in terms of growth potential, that's your biggest growth potential time. So if you're like, we really got to get our numbers up and get our voice out there, highly recommend using the sample tweets, scheduling those that we spoke about earlier, and just really jumping into these conversations and being engaged, and you will definitely see growth. And so then also using hashtags, images, videos, and emojis to make your posts more eye-catching, and we'll show some of that when we head into Twitter, and we'll kind of just see how the landscape of Twitter and how why those things matter. And I'm going to say again, post frequently and consistently. And since it's so important, that's again like why a third-party thing like Twitter is important, or Hootsuite is important, so that you can do it in a sustainable way. At the end, we'll talk about that, and I'll show you. I think I kept it up, the statistic about sustainability in managing social media, because I know that's something we all worry about and struggle with. And I think that's part of the fear of tweeting, is that if you've ever heard me on a webinar, I always say the lifespan of a tweet is about 15 minutes, and that can be really daunting. So after about 15 minutes, tweets, most people have already seen it. Now, every time it gets retweet, it extends that life, but that means you can tweet 20 times a day, and that is a scary prospect. And so I highly recommend, using something like Hootsuite. And as I said before, making clear and direct statements about current issues and values that are important to your organization or to you as an individual, that is what that's what people are really looking for. They want to get on, they want to say, yes, I agree, retweet, or yeah, I really like that, like, you know, and that's what gets you that engagement. Or I have something to say about this. And so that can be done in a few different ways. So I wanted to, I'm going to head into Twitter and I'm going to show some of these things, like what's the difference between a like and a retweet. And before I do that, I want to go through some of just like Twitter basics, Twitter words to know. So first thing is a handle. So that's the @ with the username. And so you can use that in the body to gain the specific attention of a person. And when you do that, it's called a mention. And so the usernames are usually in blue. They're live links, we call them. So if you click on it, it'll take you somewhere. It takes you to that person's page. If you hover it over it, you can see a little bit of their profile. So we'll look at some of that. And then a retweet is a tweet that you forward to your followers, and it retains the original attribution of the person who originally tweeted it. So it's like it's a quote that shows up. It's like quoting like a block quote in a paper that you wrote, right? So your professor reads it and they're like, okay, this is in the body of their thing. It's they fully 100% want me to see this entire thing. It's part of their voice, but it's coming from somewhere else. And so, and then there's like, which is when it's just the heart symbol, and it indicates support for that. So they didn't necessarily forward it to their followers in the same way, but it shows up, and we'll look at that. But those are the two ways that they can engage. And so a reply is a direct response to a tweet, and you can reply to your own tweet the way that USBC did with our pinned tweet about the migrant statement to extend your character count. And then there's URL shortening, which is a quick way to just shorten URLs so that they're a little bit less, they're a little bit more beautiful in your post, and they don't take up as much space. So, oh, and then a hashtag is any word or phrase that's immediately preceded by the pound sign. And it's important, it can be a phrase, it can be multiple words, but there can't be any spaces. Once there's a space, it's not part of that hashtag anymore. And then a trending topic or hashtag is it's either like it's a topic or a hashtag that the algorithm uses to show that it's popular. And you can look at what's trending nationally or in your state at any moment on Twitter.
We have a couple more. We have a couple more questions. You want to wait or get those now?
I think let me go through this, and then if there are any that weren't answered, then I'll answer those, because I'm going to go through this, and then I'll go on to Twitter, and then, well, actually, no. Can you tell me what there are so I can make sure that if I'm not planning on doing it, I just do it. I don't want to waste time with things that people maybe don't need.
So the first is, how often do you post to optimize growth?
So I think, during National Breastfeeding Month, I would say to post like 15 times a day if you can, if you have enough content to, and that's even just recycled content, because a lot of stuff is also happening. And so that means spacing them out about every half hour. And that's a pretty good mix, because then you can get in a lot of other people's information and your own information too, because it's also a really good time if you're launching like a fundraising campaign or an advocacy campaign. And that's really different from just sharing information, especially with all the stuff that happened this weekend. I mean, like, there's just going to be so much happening. And so and with Twitter, with Facebook, you really should only post once or twice a day. Because of the way the algorithm is even too. The algorithm really punishes you if you don't have a lot of engagement on your posts. And Twitter is not necessarily like that, because it is a conversation and people do a lot more searching for topic areas. And there's conversation constantly happening. And the more you're in those conversations, the more you're using that hashtag, the better. So we say, like, a squeaky wheel gets the grease for Twitter.
And the other is, do you have to have a Twitter account to be able to see what others are tweeting?
No, you can go on to Twitter and just look. But honestly, I'll say that it's the setting up a Twitter is really, really easy. And it is, in terms of energy input, if you're going to be on Twitter looking at what other people are doing, you might as well equip yourself with the ability to retweet, because a retweet, it takes 0 seconds. And I actually, the platforms now, I know Sprout Social definitely has it. That's the one that we pay for. And I think Hootsuite will have it too if you pay for it, but on the free version, they don't. You can schedule a retweet, which honestly, I mean, I don't know, maybe this is like super nerdy, but it totally changed the game for me, because I'll show you how to manually schedule a retweet, but the ability to just push one button and schedule a retweet for in the future is an amazing feature, because retweets are really important. There's so much, like 15 posts is a lot of posts, and so you have to diversify your content between original things that you're sharing from other people that are already on Twitter versus something you got in a newsletter and you cut and paste into Twitter. So those are the 3 ways, and you have to diversify all of those, or it's not manageable, it's not sustainable. So that's what I would say about that. Are there any other?
That's all we've got.
Okay. Oh, okay. Okay, so I wanted to just, I took some screenshots. I wanted to show you guys. Oh, okay. My thing is, my little arrow is silly. The arrow that says handle should actually be going to this @ California BF. That's their handle. And so, that's the handle. Yes.
Lynette, I do have a question about that. Can the handle only be a certain amount of characters? Because I remember when I was setting it up, because I was recently thinking, should the handle be similar to what the name says, to say like California Breastfeeding or California Breastfeeds, like CA Breastfeeding or Breastfeeds instead of California BF, because that doesn't really give a lot of context to people, like what our handle, the meaning of the handle, of who we are.
I think that, no, I understand what you're saying, but I don't think that it's that big of a deal, because if I wanted to find it's really about the user. If someone's like, I want to get on Twitter and I'm looking for the California breastfeeding, they're going to type in California breastfeeding and Twitter's going to bring this up. Just like, that's exactly what I just did. I just typed in California and I started typing in breastfeeding and it started to come up, because that's what the algorithm does. And when we go in and look at how you search hashtags, we'll talk about the search bar, because that's really important to understand how the search bar works, so that you can set things up so that people can find you.
Okay.
And so this is a retweet. So they retweeted WPI Reproductive Justice Team, and they commented on this retweet, right? So this is why the original tweet from this organization is embedded in their tweet, and they use the hashtag. And so I just wanted to show a few examples of, like, this means a reply, a like, a retweet, and then these are mentions that I put in a reply, so that I posted the original thing, and which is a poll, 24 hours left, and then I just asked these people to retweet and took a screenshot. Okay, so let's head into Twitter, because there's a lot of cool stuff to look at in Twitter. Let's make our screen bigger.
Lynette, this is Erica. How many characters can you have in a tweet?
Twitter just increased. I think it's 240 now. It was 180, I think. And so, another interesting thing that they did is, let's see. let's pull out a tweet. So you can tweet a lot of different ways. One of them is pressing this button right here that says tweet. And so before it used to actually have numbers right here, but now it has this little circle. And so as you type in, the circle fills up. Oh, my little grammar checker is going crazy. It's like, no, that's not, these are not words, and you have to fix it. But they made that change so that people are a little less worried about the character count in there. This is a horrible place to put that. So I have this checker, and especially with social media, things do move really fast. So I use something called Grammarly to make sure to help me not have any grammatical errors. But under here, if I can shut it off, there's a little thing. And let me see. If you type in, now Twitter allows you to, you see where it says add another tweet. That's there before. So basically, Twitter understands that people are getting reply, so it's going to automatically give the reply. So it can add additional tweets and then all at once, so that nobody. Before you had to do it really fast, because if somebody replies in between, then it's going to break up your chain. And now Twitter has like changed that. And so yeah, so now there's that circle instead. I don't know if that answered your question. And a vector is anything, including a space. So I'm pretty sure it's 240 characters, although I don't pay as much attention to how many characters it is now, because they changed it, so I'm constantly looking at the number anymore, and it's significantly more. So at one point, images took up character space. Images no longer take up character space, and you have more character space, and you can immediately do a reply, right? So the character limitations of Twitter are slowly becoming less restrictive. So a few of the things that I wanted to show are this. It would be your organization page. So if I clicked on this button that says home, it would this accept USBC. And so since this isn't our home page though, I can message and I can tweet to them. And I'm going to click on this so that you can see what it does, because this is about the mention. So this is their handle. And tweeting to them is just going to pull up a box that already has their handle in it. I think my computer's being a little too slow to do all of the smaller demonstrations that I want to do, because I don't want it to take so long. But I see it says handle, and then I can get to tweet. And so you could also see the score for my came on. And emojis. Here is an image of all your location. And so all of these stuff, Twitter is going to be into it. So
Lynette, yeah, we're having a hard time hearing you. It's very robotic. Do you have a handheld that you can maybe use?
Handheld? Oh, okay. Using internet. Hello.
We're here, Sarah. I think Lynette's getting off the computer to get on the phone.
Is the audio, should I go?
The sound is just really poor right now. I'm wondering if you're able to get on the phone, because Sarah doesn't have any control over your audio. If Erica should start and then we come back to you. And you might be able to chat that. And it's just at this exciting part too. And but there is a lot of interference just with your voice breaking up. Sarah, do you want to switch it over to?
Sure, I can switch it over.
Erica?
Yeah, that works for me.
Okay.
This is Lynette. Can you guys hear me? Switch to the phone.
Oh, yes. We
Oh,
can.
yeah.
I can hear that.
All right, so should we switch back?
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
Oh, Lynette, we can't hear you.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, you're sounding very faint.
Okay, I'm gonna put it right up.
Okay, so are we going to switch it back to Lynette then presenting? Or would you like me to go?
Yeah, it should be.
Okay.
It should be switching over
There
to
we go.
me.
Okay.
All right. So, sorry about that. You can tweet directly to any organization, and what this does, when you mention someone in a tweet, the way that I would be doing with the California breastfeeding right now, is it sends them a message. It sends them a notification that you've said something to them. So up here, where you see my notifications, clicking here, it shows you every time that someone likes your tweet or retweets your tweet or replies to your tweet or mentions you, it tells you that. So if they follow you, it tells you all of these things. So I can see that this is a retweet of our tweet with a comment. So they have said something, and then, oh wow, cool. That's right now. Awesome. I'm gonna like that. And so I could click on this hashtag and I could see more posts with this hashtag, but it really just helps me keep track of what's happening with our organization. But mentioning someone specifically is really important, because anytime you tweet it into the Twitterverse, and putting in a hashtag is kind of like walking into a specific room, or saying that like I'm gonna scream in the direction of this room, right? And like put my tweets in this lane. But a mention is kind of like walking up to someone and saying something to them loud enough for other people to hear, because it's not a private message, but you're absolutely talking to specific people. And that's what that mention is. Like, hey, I'm talking to you, is what mentioning someone in a tweet does. And so we have a lot of just retweets. I don't think we have any. Oh, actually, mentions are so important that it actually has its own little header up here. And so if you click on that, it'll show you all the times that someone mentioned you, because they are talking directly to you and you want to see that. And so you can look at your mentions. I will say a thing that's tricky about third-party things is third-party management systems, is it doesn't necessarily always show up with a like here if you did it in a third-party system. So I also would recommend, since it's so easy, I often will just go on my phone and go through and make and like things, because just to make sure that this because you're trusting a system to do something, and it's easy to check to make sure that you sent out the tweets you intended to send, because if you get on Twitter and you don't see them, then someone's going to call you and be like, hey, you didn't send out any tweets. But the likes and the retweets are not necessarily as obvious. And so I definitely recommend getting on your phone every once in a while and just doing that. And so that's really important. And another thing that's that makes a huge difference when you're first getting on Twitter or setting up your Twitter is understanding how the search function works. Putting a hashtag on something makes it more specific. So, for instance, if I searched hashtag breastfeeding, this tweet by the American Academy of Pediatrics would not come up because they did not write hashtag breastfeeding. They just wrote breastfeeding. And so for things that are more generic, like the word breastfeeding, that are going to come up in a lot of tweets without it being a hashtag, you want to just search it without the hashtag, as opposed to something like WBW8 2018, which is a very specific like conference hashtag, campaign hashtag. Those are the things that you want to hashtag. So when you're creating a hashtag or looking for something, you want to be careful about whether or not how you're creating hashtags and how you're searching hashtags, because you might unintentionally exclude possible entries that you want to see or you need to see. And so you can see when these are things that I've searched recently, and they're really specific things. So I rarely ever search hashtag breastfeeding because that would give me fewer outputs than I really need and want. So, and I do want to show what's the difference between a like and a retweet. And so here's, to do that, we're gonna go to, this is our feed. So here we see all, our homepage takes us to our feed, and we see all the posts from all of the people that we're currently following. So we may not be following Joy Reid, but we can see it because someone we are following, and 3 others, so 4 people that we're following liked this tweet. And so that's why we can see it on our post. So this little heart icon lets people see that, okay, so I'm seeing the tweet, but I don't necessarily know why I'm seeing it. So that can be a bit confusing. But so you can see this person liked it, these 2 people liked it, and that's why it's coming up on our feed, as opposed to when someone retweets something. So here's Lactation retweeting Kelly Mom, and it's a quote retweet. So I'll actually try it and I'll show you what that looks like. So they added their own text on top of this and replied to it to make a thread. And so as an organization, and I can see who else is engaged with it, and it allows me to reply. But on any one of these, I can hit the retweet button, and you can retweet one of 2 ways. You can do just a straight retweet, which just shares okay, I must have accidentally pressed on their page, but so
Lynette, while you're doing that retweet, I noticed in the beginning when you did the mention, so you can either just go to somebody's site and press that, send a direct message at the mention, or you just put the @ in their handle, and that would be the same thing? Okay.
Yep. So yeah. So you can, if you're already on the person's page and you want to add that, and you want to say something directly to them, then that's a really great way to do it, because you don't have to type it in, but you can type, if you know someone's handle, you can type it in at any point. So if you're going into comments and typing in a sentence and just adding their, maybe at La Leche League US would alert La Leche League, kind of like I did with that response in the examples where I just put in a bunch of people's hashtag or handles so that they could see the poll. That works fine too. And so maybe I can go back to that. So here's the, I don't have to put anything in this comment section. I can, and then I can just hit retweet and it'll send it just like this, and it'll send the entire thread. And so those are, I think that really, that's another way that people engage in conversations. So sometimes if you're in Twitter and you see a lot of threads, people just jump in, especially, on news sites, people just jump into those threads because that's kind of like entering a room to have a conversation, like someone's giving a talk and you go in there and start talking to. That's the level of engagement that replying to someone's post is. And so the thing that's kind of these trainings can be a little tricky because Twitter is set up so there's this field of study called human computer interaction. And so social media, they employ a lot of human computer interaction specialists because they're designing apps to make them really easy for you to use, which means that you can do everything multiple ways, right? And so you can reply to someone's tweet. Like right now, I can unfollow them from right here. I don't have to go anywhere else to unfollow them if I wanted to unfollow them. Or if I wasn't following them, I could follow them right now, right? And so, and if I wanted to go to their homepage, I could click on this and it would take me to their homepage. And even right here, when I click the reply, it's actually going to automatically let them know that I replied to them because it lets you know who exactly you're replying to. So if they had mentioned Kelly Mom if they had mentioned Kelly Mom in the body of this tweet, it would say reply to La Leche League and Kelly Mom, and it would reply to both of them automatically for me. So I don't need to put that into the actual body of my tweet, unless I want to. And so that's why Twitter trying to it's important to go to trainings, but it really also is important to just get on Twitter because it's designed so that, I may do something a specific way. I might prefer to click here and press tweet because I can see it, but you might find that you really prefer going to the person's page and then tweeting to them specifically, because it's designed so that no matter how you want to do it, you can do it. No matter what comes more naturally to you, it works for you because they want you on there and they want you to stay.
Lynette, I have a question too about, let's say someone you're following notices something first and they retweeted it. Is it best then to just retweet it from there?
I think it depends. Yes, it does. And I encounter this a lot too, in terms of thinking about, especially like if one organization, if a member organization retweets something that a member organization tweeted first, do I go back to the original tweet and retweet that? Like, how do I? And I think for me, one of the things that's important is that is it a straight retweet or is it a quote retweet? So when they retweeted the original thing, did they add an insight or anything else that makes it so that really I should retweet the second thing because it's more of a conversation? And, if not, and it's just a retweet, maybe like, one organization is having a webinar, then another organization retweets it. I'm going to go back to the original organization and retweet their webinar because I want them they're trying to publicize their own webinar, right? So part of helping them do that is getting as many likes and retweets on that post, because it actually it makes a difference when the more likes something has, Twitter actually makes it a little easier to see it. They prioritize, social media always prioritizes popular content. And so, and you can even see like why does it matter to have images or links and things? Because it literally takes up more space, right? So people can see it more. And so since it prioritizes popular content, your likes and your retweets matter. But here's the other thing. If you need 15 posts a day, right? So you're trying to get at 15, especially when you're trying to grow, right? Squeaky wheel. And so if there's an original and a retweet, do both. Like if you can retweet, like you're on Twitter and you retweet the person that did the retweet of someone else immediately, then you go back and you cut and paste out. Oh, I'll show you how to do. This is really important if you don't have the ability to schedule a retweet, is the ability to do a manual retweet. And so what you do is you cut and paste. So you drag, like you can cut and paste people's tweets. And journalists do this all the time because they will quote a Twitter. They'll quote someone on Twitter all the time, or you can actually, I'll show that after, but you can copy the link to a tweet or embed a tweet into something else, which is pretty cool. But I can like hit Command C on my Mac and that copies it, and I can paste it into the body of a tweet and say RT, which means retweet, put at Lactation League USA, and then paste the rest of this, and paste their tweet and then schedule that or send that out. Since I'm actually on Twitter, I would just hit retweet, but it's important to know how to manually schedule retweets from organizations. And you would have to open up this article and copy and paste the link to the article too. It's a little more tedious than having a software that allows you to do advanced retweet, which for sustainability and efficiency purposes, I highly recommend. But it's also for a long time I did it manually, and it works fine too.
Well, thank you, Sarah. I'm wondering if there are any questions before we move on to Erica.
Yes, there are a few.
A couple quick ones.
So if there is no comment, then a retweet is not embedded. Is it better to add a comment or no comment to a retweet?
Oh, I don't know. It's not a matter of better or worse. It's a matter of, do you have anything else to add or to say to it? So I don't. It's if you have something to say, then say it, and if you don't force it. Just because people are coming to you for information, and so that was kind of if you have context to add to the content, absolutely add it. If you don't, just share the content, and that's fine.
Okay. Is it still true that shorter is still more likely to gather engagement?
It depends on it depends on if it needs context, right, and what type of engagement. So if it can be as concise as possible, right, but possible is about clarity, especially with like today's, like, since things are moving so fast and fake news is a thing, people really want to be clear about where you're coming from, and the need for context is really important, and doing that as succinctly as possible. So I would say that, brevity is only your friend if you can still get your full point across. And that's why Twitter is doing all these things to allow people to add more context and details to things, not so that they can be verbose, because you still don't have a whole ton of space, but just so that it cuts down on the chaos of Twitter because things are clearer and more accurate.
How did you decide who to follow and not to follow? Old advice suggests refollowing anyone who followed you, your Twitter feed with obvious exceptions.
Oh yeah, no, that is actually, so I think so. If you were like, and if you wanted to be an influencer, if you were like an individual influencer, they do that. If you follow, or they'll follow you, and then you follow them back, and then there actually are third-party programs that'll actually keep track of who's following you and how long you've been following them, and who unfollowed you. So they use those to do growth hacking. So they'll follow you, you follow them, then they'll unfollow you so that they can get their numbers up. But that doesn't, as an organization, you really should only be following sources of your news. And then, if there are like individual advocates that you want to follow, even on varying levels, maybe it's like this is, I'm going to make sure that we are always following 20 mothers, right? Or 20 women who have children who've like expressed interest in our organization and like supportive breastfeeding. So I can just keep an eye on, like almost like bellwethers, like, oh, okay, these are issues that are important to women, and so like making sure, well, we're one state, so we're going to follow 20 women in our state and 30 women nationally, however you want to break that down. But it's, especially as an organization, it's much less about who's following you and following them back. I don't think people really expect you to follow them back.
That's a great question. I was actually wondering that. Sarah, is it all right if we hold the questions to the end right now and we'll pass it on to Erica?
Sure.
All right, so as we're passing the baton, again, this is Erica Root from the California Department of Public Health's Maternal, Child, and Adolescent Health Division. And just by way of background, I've been here about a year and a half, and prior to coming to the state, I worked in private and nonprofit world doing communications and public affairs. And most recently, I worked at a PR firm where I managed social media channels for a number of our health advocacy groups. And then on a regular basis here at the department, I produce social media posts for health observances like the one that we have upcoming in August. So I'm going to walk you through in a little bit more depth our website. And I know earlier on in the conversation, Sarah sent the link. So if you don't have the link yet, go up to the chat box and find the link to this webpage so you have easy access to it beyond today. And essentially why we created this page is so that we can house everything in one central location, so that we could launch truly a statewide effort to raise awareness about lactation accommodation targeted around World Breastfeeding Week. But as we've mentioned on this call, there are a number of health observances around breastfeeding in August. California will have its own breastfeeding month. And then the last week of August is actually Black Breastfeeding Week. And in the coming weeks, you'll see a couple of posts added to this page specific to Black Breastfeeding Week as well. So this is kind of just your go-to resource, and we will continue to build on it in the coming weeks. So I really want to draw your attention to this resources box here that I'm hovering over, specifically this Know Your Breastfeeding, this sample social media posts PDF. So I'm going to open that up for us, and this is just sort of, pre-approved content from the department that links you to some key resources that you can use this August to share. So if you're feeling really confident, you really want to engage on social media, but you might not be ready to share your own posts, or you want to supplement some of your original content with content from us, this is a perfect go-to resource where you can copy and paste and schedule your own posts. And we've even gone ahead and suggested images for you to use. And I'm just going to go back to that website, our resource page here, because we have the posts actually on the site itself. So you can access it by way of the PDF, but you can also go here and copy and paste the posts to use. And we have installed Twitter buttons, so you can actually click to Twitter, and if you're logged into an account, this is kind of just an easier way to send your posts directly from the website itself. Unfortunately, what we aren't capable of yet is really having a suggested or anchored image with our URL. So, oftentimes when you're sharing a news article or something, Facebook and Twitter will auto-fetch an image related to that article. That way you don't need to add anything. We aren't there yet with the state. However, you can manually go ahead and add these suggested images. And so what we've done is we've made them easy access JPEG format. So you can go ahead and save the picture as locally and add it to your posts. So we just want to make sure you're aware of that. So a couple of the resources that we're going to link you to include our California Infant Feeding Guide that was produced recently here at the department, and talks about key resources and information for breastfeeding mothers. And something that we've created, well, two things actually that we've created specifically for August are this Know Your Breastfeeding Rights handout. It's this fact sheet that I'm going to click on right now. So this is something that our social media posts link to, but it is also something that your organization is able to print out and hand out, if you are doing events in the community or, case management one-on-one. This breaks down for both employees and employers what your rights are around breastfeeding. So it basically just empowers breastfeeding women or people, that letting them know that they have rights, they have the right to talk to their employer and have, a private room that is not a bathroom stall where they are able to pump, so that they are able to continue to express breast milk once they are back to work after giving birth. So we just kind of want to point you to this new resource that is available. We welcome you to use it and print it, as needed. One of the other tools that we have created, it's really an updated version of our workplace breastfeeding support infographic. So this takes us through what breastfeeding support looks like here in the state of California, and it gives just some key statistics about how we are making progress as a state with breastfeeding support in the workplace, but how there is still room to get better, room to improve. And so this is just an infographic for you to use, to look at, and to share. And this picture right now is currently our old version, but this is going to be updated this week. And all of the additional Facebook and social media posts, we only have 3 shown on the website currently, but those are being added probably today as well. So within the week, those will be easy access for you to go ahead and share and schedule. And we want to make sure that you have everything well in advance of August. But of course, you can always just access this PDF right here, because that has everything you need in one place. So
Erica.
Yes.
How about the Knowing Your Breastfeeding Rights? Right now it's in English, and it's going to be posted in Spanish also?
Yeah, so we are having that translated, so it's not ready yet, but once it is, we'll make sure to add it to this resource page. So keep checking back here to see if that's available, and we're hoping to get it up on the page, by end of July, so that you have it in time for August. And again, these are resources that you're welcome to link to on social media, but you're also welcome to print out and use locally as needed. And they can just go to CDP. Yeah, and you're welcome to go to the cdph.ca.gov/breastfeeding, and that will link you here. And
our Twitter.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you can also go to, if you aren't comfortable, copying and pasting or scheduling these posts, you're welcome to go to the department's Twitter and Facebook pages. It's at CA Public Health and kind of follow along the conversation this August. And you're welcome to, share Facebook posts or retweet any tweets we have going out, because we are going to be sharing these messages as well. So as you're preparing for August, we're July 9th, you have a couple of weeks to go. But if you are a local health jurisdiction, a county, it might be more challenging for you to just, get these online and get things posted. So we encourage you, or maybe you have some hurdles internally at your organization, make sure you're talking to whoever is doing your social media posts and let them know that this observance is around the corner, and get these posts to them as soon as possible so that they can schedule it into their regular, routine. And then, of course, make sure that you're using the tips and tricks that Lynette provided earlier today. Sometimes it's as simple as just retweeting to get your voice out there and to begin the conversation. And so, there's a couple of partners on this call who will definitely be sending out messages so you can track the hashtag World Breastfeeding, the WBW 2018 is hashtag to see what's going on this coming August. And I think we're going to take a quick poll right now. Sarah, if you could get the poll going, we are just going to ask people who plans to use these sample social media posts in August.
Okay, we're at 60% of people who have voted. I'm just going to give it a few more seconds.
Okay, great. And I'm really hoping we're close to 100%.
How is it now, Sarah?
Okay, so sharing. So we have a lot of yeses and a lot of maybes.
Well, if you're a maybe, hopefully we can turn you into a yes, because we provided this sample social media content, or at the very least you could, go to @CA Public Health and retweet and like and share, and, just to get your feet wet in terms of engaging on social media this August. And just so you know, yeah, I'm not seeing the results on the screen, but I don't know if that matters.
Oh, they were. Do you want me to put them back up?
Just. It's okay. Anyways, so yeah, are there any questions for me about our social media content, or maybe questions for Lynette about Twitter?
There are several questions, and there are also a few people who have had their hands up, or at least one person who's had their hand up. So I'm going to do the hand first. Angelina, I'm going to unmute you if you'd like to ask your question. Did she disappear? I think she disappeared. Okay. So let me go back up. Can you add hashtags to a retweet?
Yes.
Yeah.
So if when you do the retweet and you have the comment section, you're gonna want to add any hashtags there. And then when you retweet it, it'll attach it. And it's perfectly okay to only add a few hashtags, maybe add a mention and retweet it.
Please share more about Hootsuite.
Okay. Yes. So I know that the conference handout was added, and so you should be able to click on it. At the very end, I put a screenshot of Hootsuite. We're actually launching a 4-week training on like how to use Hootsuite. And so the information, if you send me an email, my email is at the end of the PowerPoint. We'll be going through like setting up an account, scheduling, setting up your feeds, using it to do Twitter chats. And so it's going to be 4 weeks. It'll be video, a downloadable, and then like optional individual, and then like a group meeting on Fridays for people who want to like jump into that. And it's the 4th week is actually designed to be, it's like called Walk the Walk, and it's actually just going through it which would be World Breastfeeding Week, and then I'll be available for individual troubleshooting that week. It's also at the end of that week is our big conference, but it's a really great way to work on scheduling so that you can, and I know there was a lot of maybes, but I will be using these sample tweets. It makes life so much easier because we're all working together, and it really helps all of us give the people that are relying on us for information the information that they need. So I highly recommend doing it. And so that information is at the end.
And Lynette, to access those webinars, you do need to have a login at United States Breastfeeding Committee website. Is that true?
A login would be preferred, but if you send me an email, I know sometimes people have a hard time, so we can help you make a login. But if you don't have a login, please don't let that stop you from emailing me to say you want to register for the program. That can definitely be worked
out. Is it okay to post English and Spanish in one post, or does that become too long of a post? Is it better to break them up?
Well, you might not have the character count to do that. So you should probably send it as 2 separate messages is what I would recommend, unless it's really short. And 1 or 2 sentences, and then you can do both sentences back to back.
How do you deal with breastfeeding trolls on social media?
Oh my goodness. Well, like breathing exercises, remembering that people are mean on the internet. That's a lot of what I talk about in a lot of other webinars is just the self-care of social media management. I think that social media can pull up a lot of different things, but there isn't a good thing. One thing that you can do is if anyone has a specific person that's really, really bothersome, you can actually mute people so you don't see their posts. And so I've done that a few times. Especially there can be really inappropriate things that come up. I mean, it can be a really bizarre world. And so I definitely have blocked and muted people. And if you want to email me, we can do a one-on-one and I can show you how to do that.
And so is putting a hashtag like CCing someone?
Yes. Yep. So if you do that, like if you add it to a retweet, it's like exactly like CCing someone.
And I don't have any more questions, and I don't think I see any more hands raised. Does anyone have any further questions? Nope. Thank you guys for hanging in there. We still have almost 100 people.
I'm just going to cover one last thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll take over. And I really highly recommend that people go to the United States Breastfeeding Committee website. It's very easy to get a log on. There are just so many resources there. And you can even sign up to the California Breastfeeding Coalition. We want to start using the capabilities that the website has, and maybe creating some listservs, but there's tons of resources, and so it's very, very useful. So I'm going to just remind everyone to complete the evaluation. It's going to be emailed to you. We really, really want your feedback so that we can improve the webinars, so that we can support the capacity of everyone who's working directly with individuals and organizations around lactation accommodation, and to get your ideas. We also ask that you please share the recordings, get them out, and remember your hashtags. There's a few there, and I added the NBM 18, which is National Breastfeeding Month, and that for the year 18. There's many different hashtags you can use. A popular one is normalized breastfeeding, and I'm even seeing some now like breastfeeding art, and different types of hashtags. And I want to remind you about the California Breastfeeding Summit that's coming up. The name of the hotel, it's at the same hotel, just changed the name. The Wyndham changed to Delta Hotels by Marriott. And we thank everyone for being on this webinar and for starting to build your capacity and using social media and Twitter. It really is the way things are going. And at my age, I was resistant and catching on. I have the app, the Twitter app now on my phone, getting a little more familiar with it and actually having some fun with it. Not spending a lot of time. It doesn't take a lot of time, but going through to just see what's going on in the Twitter sphere and how we can be involved. So if there are any other questions or comments from the speakers, last comments, otherwise we will.
Nope, nothing from me, Robbie. Just go ahead and check out our website, and we hope you utilize our social media posts.
Yes, this California Department of Public Health has a new website. So also lots of resources, and it's being updated every day. So thank you, Lynette. Go ahead, Lynette.
No, I said I have nothing. Just thank you for having me.
Oh, somebody's asking for Lynette's email address before we go.
Oh, okay. It's LANIGBO@usbreastfeeding.org, and it's at the end of the handout.
Yep.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Sarah, for all your technical support. Thank you, Lynette and Erica, for presenting today, and for all of you for being on the webinar. And stay tuned for the next webinar in this series and for the in-person training, and read that email that comes to you right after this webinar. So thank you all.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.